Dr. Angela powerfully demonstrates claims that high drug prices are necessary to fund research and development are unfounded. The truth is that drug
And once again, I want to say greetings to each and every one of you, Aquaba, and welcome. Welcome to another round of the Conscious Rasa Report here on the Mastermind here on LIBRadio, LIBTV, and LivingInBlack.com. The Mastermind is where I get together with my colleagues and we look at what is happening in the world of today. We look at culture, consciousness, historical perspectives, entertainment, economics, education, health, labor, law, politics, religion, family, conflict, future studies, all areas of human interactivity and development. Today's date is Sunday, January the 25th, 2026 in the Western calendar, the Gregorian calendar. This corresponds to the year 6266 in the Kemetic calendar, to which we've realigned our cultural clock. Welcome to the seventh millennium. Welcome to the Mastermind here on LIB Radio, LIB TV, and on livinginblack.com. And let me say welcome, Aquaba, to my brother in microphone today. Brother Junius, we have you in the house. Aquaba, welcome. How are you doing today, Brother Junius?
Badasi, I'm well and feeling good. Looking forward to today's program. We're experiencing some heavy snow here where I am.
And yeah, this weather is a major story across America.
Really, yes, yeah, major, impacting several states, particularly in the South, the southern states that are not used to this type of weather. It's going to be very catastrophic for many of these places because they don't even have access to salt. A lot of them they send caravans up north just to purchase salt.
All right. Well, welcome, Brother Dwara, also to the program today. Aquaba, how you doing today, Lion?
Doing great, Baba's Shikamoni to you both, Ubuntu Ma to the global LIB radio family. Great to be here.
It's great to have you with us, and let me say greetings to our listening audience checking in right and early at the top of the show. Joshua K. Empower is in the house, as also Flying Guillotine is in the house. We welcome both of you to today's program as well. We're going to say greetings to our Rumble family here in just a second, but we have the weather as a major news story across America. I don't think it is unfair to begin right there today.
No, it's going to be interesting to see how folks respond. I saw a major bum rush on Thursday and Friday in terms of people going out buying stuff, food, trying to get de-icer, salt, items like that. And I thought to myself, I said, man, suppose, because there have been different changes all along, they were saying that various models were predicting different outcomes. And I thought to myself, suppose this was a scam that they just said this to get people to go out and buy and to boost the economy. But here they're saying it's going to be accumulation, but it's also going to be sleet and freezing rain. So we'll see how it all plays out.
Yeah. I don't know if it's a scam. We do the best we can to follow what's going on around the country. We do know that the scammers are having a field day with Donald Trump in their pocket. He is undeniably a tool of the corporate structure, etc. But when it comes to messing with the weather, I don't know if even the corporations or Donald Trump are that bold. Let me first of all say greetings to our Rumble family checking in with us for Africa One, checking in from the Barren Rock, UK. And welcome to you. She says, Hotep Mastermind panel and Global LIB family. And Queen Mother Kashiba, she's also checking in right at the beginning of the program. It's great to have you in the house, Queen Mother. Hotep family, she says to us also. And Eddie McCrory is checking in on the YouTube as well. So great to have a good group of people here with us today. I'm excited about having all of us together today. And I'm excited about us having the opportunity, the responsibility maybe, to create forums in which African people align with, collaborate, cooperate with African people, all towards the intention of making the community better for what we are going to be doing today. So that brings us to, of course, the weather. And, the idea that global warming is a trick that's encouraging us to engage in behaviors that we otherwise would not be engaging in has been that idea has been floated no small number of times over the last few years.
Yeah, no, that's definitely true, especially via the World Economic Forum. But I'm sure we'll get into that. Over here, we're slated to get anywhere from a foot to 2 feet. The temperatures have been very cold here with the wind chill factor. It almost got to be below 20 degrees, so sub-zero temperatures at night in the early mornings. But ironically, and Baba Junius, you touched upon this a little bit. I went into the grocery store yesterday, and I keep food pretty well stocked. So I was in there just for a couple of luxury items, so to speak, and I could not get over how empty the shelves were. People had just wiped the overwhelming majority of those shelves bare. But Baba Kitty, you're gonna really find this interesting. The chips and the candy were the things that were gone completely off the shelves, and that's exactly what I saw during the pandemic as well, during that initial panic. So here we are again, be it a so-called novel virus, quote unquote, with COVID-19, or be it simply a nor'easter, a blizzard, and people's default is panic, and they're not working off the best side of their brain when panic and anxiety ensues. And then last point is I heard an article or I heard a segment on the radio the other day, and while I was doing some errands, and they were talking about how important alcohol consumption was during a blizzard. And essentially they were going around interviewing people who were prioritizing going to the liquor store over going to the grocery store. Unbelievable, but I guess we shouldn't be surprised.
Well,
now, that was part of all the segments here in this market. It would show people going to get food. They would talk about preparation by the local municipalities, counties, and states. But that was one of the things, too, that they showed people purchasing alcohol.
Yep. That's the big seller during a blizzard, apparently.
Yeah. And here, let me just correct my settings over here. I just realized I had a setting. We were looking at something they're not intended to look at for so long. And let me put myself in the village. Where are we at? My village is over here somewhere. Bear with me. Oh, here we are. We're in the village now. And when you talk about they had wiped the shelves virtually clean of empty calories,
Exactly.
and that the people figured they were going to be locked in the house rather than eat greens or
Fruit.
proteins, things,
Yeah.
omega-3 fatty acids, things that will be complementary to their body. Fruits, which will give you an idea of, well, the fruits are out of season, so that's not
Mm,
necessarily doing a good thing.
right.
But things like nuts, which or would be a year-round crop because of the hard shell, etc., and um, these things were not prioritized by the
No.
majority of people. Doesn't that give us an indicator that in the background, the trend toward empty calories, consuming empty calories, snacking, and just grooving food, grooving on your food, is a very unhealthy pattern that's well set inside the country?
Yes, at 120%, Baba Kitty. I wholeheartedly agree. And I think, well, we've long said, I can't claim that I coined this phrase, but I feel like this will be familiar when I say it. Today we are eating for flavor instead of for nutritional content.
Well, I
Mm-hmm.
think it's worse than that. It's not flavor and the combination. Look at some of the
Mm.
advertisements on television. The combinations, a lot of cheese, a lot of fried food, things like that.
Yeah.
We're being conditioned, yes, quote unquote, taste and flavor, but
Mhm.
also there's this insidious, hypnotic programming that's going on to make us just eat indiscriminately, just have no discernment, no value in terms of nutrition whatsoever. Just keep eating this stuff that they're coming at. And to me,
Yeah,
they're like mad scientists coming out with some of these menus and products.
I agree. You're absolutely right. And I just saw an article the other day that said the reason why some of these very uh, ultra processed foods, prepackaged foods, are so colorful in their design is because it tricks the brain into thinking that it is, and you're gonna love this, Baba Kitty. It tricks the brain into thinking that it's eating the rainbow only because the packaging has all these different nutritional colors that the brain registers as, woo, there's a lot of variety in there, perhaps, but it's dead.
Yeah, you are making a lot of sense. And eating the colors, I'm writing a new book, and eating the colors is one of the instructions
Hmm.
that I give in the book. I've given in every book I've written about longevity and health and how we eat to sustain ourselves. I always say, eat the colors. And you're right, Brother Dwara. The brain is hardwired to detect these bright colors, bright red, bright greens, bright yellows. All of these colors have significant mineral makeups when they come naturally from the plant and the soil. The minerals that are gathered together determine the intensity and the colors, the specific color. So, by the brain is hardwired to eat the colors. Of course, the scientists have known about this for some time, and the scientists are now, through their artificial colors, have been replacing nature with regard to this relationship to our brains. Now we have a new DHHS Secretary, Robert Kennedy, who is an extension of the Children's Health Defense Fund. This group has done its research and understands what these artificial colors are doing to our children, doing to our brains. And they have targeted the campaign to force the FDA to be more vigilant in its surveillance or maintaining the integrity of the world's of the country's food nature. But I necessarily am not going to rely on DHHS to tell me or to tell my family what we should be eating. I've taken it on my own agency to do so, and I highly encourage everyone else out there understand why you are naturally drawn to these bold, bright colors, and also understand what artificial colors, artificial food ingredients, but especially the artificial colors, understand what they do to your brain. It's called excitotoxin. Excite you to action, but the action is toxic, and therefore you're in deeper trouble for snacking on these bright colors. It's Skittles, etc. That should be deemed to be criminal to sell, to manufacture, and to sell stuff like that to the American public.
And Kennedy has spoken out against the dyes, the colors, and there's major pushback, even overtly as well as covertly against him.
Mm-hmm.
And I wouldn't be surprised if they are not successful, say, before the end of this year, forcing him out.
Mm.
Well, that could be very interesting because he won't go, he won't be giving it up without a fight. And I do think that there has been tremendous pressure. I've seen the tremendous pressure put on Robert Kennedy about these policies, especially when it comes to pharmaceuticals and especially the injections that our children get, so-called vaccinations. The U.S. vaccination schedule is heavily determined by the pharmaceutical companies' clout, their lobbying clout across Congress, and the U.S. vaccination schedule. Nowhere else in the planet is there such an intense vaccination schedule as the U.S. currently engages. Not even in so-called third world or developing countries do you have this intensity because, quite simply, the populations in those countries couldn't afford it. They're milking the American public for everything they can, and in the long run, creating chronic diseases that may not show up until 30 years after those series of injections are given. Am I telling the truth, Brother Dwara?
You're definitely telling the truth. Now, could I add on to that and say that is there any evidence that those so-called vaccines, those injections, are also they must suppress the immune system of the infant whose bloodstream all of this cocktail of ingredients is being dumped into?
Well, that's a key factor, specifically with the COVID injections, where they were pushing for infants to be inoculated or stabbed with the COVID injections.
Mm-hmm.
And we're seeing now broad studies across the globe, in Asia, parts of Europe, some countries in Europe, even a few here in the United States, where they're showing the negative and deleterious effect or an impact of these vaccines in terms of what you just said, undermining the immune system.
Mm.
And the list of diseases,
yes,
or situations that have developed since the introduction of these inoculations is mind-boggling.
Mm-hmm.
That's right. Most people are unaware that when a child is born, it has no immune system, not independent of its mother. The immune system for the child comes off the colostrum that's drawn from the mother's breast. And it's such a magnificent relationship. Nature in her glory is so magnificent, it's almost hard for me to explain. But the mother's breast actually senses the nature of that child's microbiome because of very discrete chemicals that are in the child's saliva, which the mother's breast then takes up and is able to examine those proteins that are in the saliva, and therefore she conforms her breast colostrum and the milk and her microbiome transmitted through the breast to feed the baby what the baby has told her very discreetly the baby needs. For scientists to think that they are smarter than that process, that they can outdo the mother's natural wisdom and breast milk, etc., is absurd. It's obscene. I would call it criminal. What
Yeah.
I've just described is something it would take a benevolent creator to if an individual put it together, it would take the most benevolent, most wise creator to put it all together. So whether you deem that to be Jesus did it, or whether you deem that to be Krishna did it, or we did it through nature, whatever. But it is just much, much bigger than mankind could ever stand. And when you mess with God on that level, there are consequences to play. We are sacrificing our children up to these beastly formulas at childhood, at birth. And the child has no immune system, for virtually none, for the first year of its life. I'm on
But
a
what
tirade here, but bear with me.
yeah, but what you're talking about is a campaign that has been going on, particularly in the last, say, 100 years with pharmacology, where they're going against nature and they're going against the creator. I mean, just stop and think about that. Put it all together, they're anti-breastfeeding,
Mhm.
and the irony is that the Europeans, the the people of leisure, were so trifling and lazy that they got black women to nurse white babies.
Right.
Number one. Number two, with the advent of modern pharmacology, they don't talk about the immune system. When you bring it up, they try to talk over you, bum rush you, or whatever, because from their bottom line perspective, the immune system doesn't make them any money, and they have to offer their alternatives that, as Keely said, that you have to purchase, number one, but number two, they all have side effects that in effect undermine your immune system.
I mean, this
Mm-hmm.
this is really what we're dealing with, is this this overwhelming, overreaching psyop for us to move away from the wisdom, the divinity, the sacredness of nature, and therefore the creator, to Urugu's latest chemical product, which in the great propaganda laid before us and perhaps perfected during colonialism, whatever they create is touted as supreme, is touted as accepted and needed, and in reality, it is we're being duped, as Malcolm said. I mean, going back to the food, it's the same thing. Why is
Mm-hmm.
this laboratory created nutritionless puffed crisp? Why is that somehow? Why do I need that over going and getting a carrot or a beet or some purple cabbage? And that's part of the okie doke. Everything is being sold to us as if it is some sort of an innovation that we need. And Baba Junius, you mentioned the packaging and the spin around the design of the desire of these things. And really, our people need to take a step back and just really focus on the logic, or the illogic for that matter, behind.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. When we're talking about biology, we must understand that ology of biology is logic. And it makes no logical sense the way this pattern's been so deeply ingrained within our population as African people under the Stockholm syndrome, but also for Urugu themselves, those people around us. There are a lot of people of European extraction around us who actually are intending to do good in the world, but they are also burdened by the disease burden on this country and the maladaptive health system that has grown up around this disease burden. It makes no sense. Now, I don't cuss. I'll just grunt when I want to cuss, and I'm not going to. I see a couple of comments have come in Brother Eddie is in the house. He's commenting on when we were talking about the sugar, the candy, the snacking, and all that. He says, yes, those sugars have been a huge problem to all of us. And even if we don't consume them, there's still a huge problem to all of us because look at the burden of disease that's happening because of sugar to our families, our extended families, the community, to the whole national health system. And he says further, he asks this question: is it possible that the problems these vaccines may be causing might be an accident? I'll put that to you, Jonas.
No, I think at the very least, it was irresponsibility.
Mm-hmm.
Early on, I tried to share with people that this Operation Warp Speed was bogus. The whole notion that they could come up with a treatment modality in less than a year, when the norm was research and development, testing, approval, you're talking about at the very minimum 8 to maybe 12 to 15 years of that whole process. And what we're finding now, Moderna, first of all, just to give you some background, Moderna was a company that had never brought a product to market in its 10-year history. They were used, to show you how this was a psyop and a scam, they were used because of that, and they partnered with some German companies, and they were able to get through, I don't know if they bribed or whatever, they were chosen to do it. And I'm saying all this to say, and I urge our viewers and listeners to go back and look at, particularly before they wipe it off the internet, look at the process within the FDA itself in terms of approval for a drug or a quote unquote vaccine. All of that was scrapped. All of the normal procedures in terms of dealing with public health, in terms of the whole notion of that you quarantine the whole society. This is preposterous. The common sense practice was you triage or address the sick person and try to isolate them, restore them to harmony. But because of this was, again, a psyop, a military action, it was part of a society or disruption and reorientation program that was bolstered by the media, which is why Keedy was deplatformed, which was why I was shadow banned, because we were trying to warn people about this process. And this is not an unintended consequence of all of that. They knew this was going to happen, just like they knew promoting social isolation was going to have major societal and catastrophic consequences. They knew that. I go and look up. Johns Hopkins did studies on the problem of social isolation. So again, going on a rant, but trying to provide as much information as possible, and I'm urging our viewers and listeners to look at. Don't just take my word for it. Look it up. Do the research. You'll see how insidious this was.
That's right. And as you make that point, we have a comment that complements exactly what you're saying. Sister 4, Africa 1, writing from the UK. If there was no malintent regarding the injections, they would not have banned people speaking out. So they knew that a number of us were going to not just complain about it, but show the scientific evidence that we could accumulate, because the evidence is so ubiquitous. In my book, Panic, which talked about the impact of the pandemic on the world, I listed 173 references in the book. Peer review references nearly all of them, but a lot of other media references that said that this is not going to be good at all. There will be severe consequences. And now we know what the severe consequences were. At the least, it would trigger autoimmune disorders. And we have now the evidence of those autoimmune disorders, including amyloidosis, which is beyond an autoimmune disorders. Amyloidosis, a consequence of the mRNA vaccine injections, is actually a bridge between Alzheimer's, the misfolded proteins that cause Alzheimer's, to essentially all aspects of cardiovascular disease, cancer, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. We know that now to be a direct consequence of the COVID-19 injections or vaccination, as they attempted to call it. We have that evidence now, and we can now speak about it because there's so much evidence to back up what we're saying, but the damage has largely already been done.
And if I might add, she talked about the ban. It was more than banning. It was ostracizing. It was delicensing, the threats across the board, not just doctors. Funeral directors that spoke up were threatened with delicensing. There was firings. There were where just people were designated persona non grata. There was the overtalk, overspeak, the bogus fact checkers, all of this. And go back and look at Event 201, which was the last simulation before they unleashed, quote unquote, COVID on the world. Now, Event 201 was one of at least 10 to 12 that had been going on since 2001 in a 20-some year span. But look at all the recommendations that came out of Event 201, and they played out exactly, particularly recommendation number 7, where they were talking about threats that they call disinformation. That's their word. That's their word for truth. That's what they consider.
The liar calls the truth disinformation, misinformation.
Right.
Wow. And when we talking about what got set up at that point, I don't think we can ignore or overlook the role of this devious organization, the World Economic Forum, which is this past week been holding their annual meeting in Davos, Switzerland. And the World Economic Forum,
about some of that.
Yeah, because Donald Trump spoke at it. Did you hear Donald Trump's speech at the World Economic Forum?
I just heard the snippets that the legacy media put out. I read some analysis or counters to what he said, but the fact that they gave him that platform, the fact that other than some comedians and a few commentators mentioned some, took issue with some of the things he said, that was a travesty to allow someone like that to get on and make the type of pronouncements, make the type of threats that he made. And it was funny because in the process, and I was going to talk about this, the Denmark pension fund threatened next month to dump U.S. treasuries. Now,
and that could spread.
Well, that's my point. Some of the BRICS Plus Alliance people have been doing that for years, and the idea of that, and the reaction of Wall Street when he threatened to just bogart and bum rush Greenland, that one day drop on Wall Street forced him to back off. And so what we're seeing is he's just totally out of control. But there are forces who are looking out for their best interest. They're not necessarily concerned about us, the people.
That's right. We're just prophets.
Yeah, we're what do they call them? We're commodities. We're ducats were items that they use to help determine their bottom line.
We've been digitized,
Right.
and we are now a part of the commodity system based upon the digitization of everything. But you're making a couple of excellent points there. Did you get a chance to hear any of that speech, Brother Dwara?
I didn't get a chance to hear the whole entire speech, but I did hear some snippets, and I've got a couple other things that I can say after. But please continue.
Well, we do want to hear what you have to say, but I insist, both of you brothers, as much as I love you, appreciate your intellect and your wisdom, force yourself to bear with Donald Trump's entire Davos speech. Now,
Okay.
I wake up in the morning and I turn on National Public Radio, NPR, and while I'm doing my 20 minutes of core exercises, and I turned it on, and it had Donald Trump's voice. I immediately recognized it, and I said, am I having a nightmare or am I awake? No, I'm awake. I just turned my alarm off. And I heard his voice, and it goes on, and it goes on, and it goes on and on. And I say, what's happening? Has he hijacked the national broadcasting system that he's making a speech to the country? Later to find out it was him at Davos, and NPR was covering it for the world. The first word that comes to my mind when I think about that, when I started to report this to other people, was he was unhinged, totally deranged and unhinged. So I'm saying to you, brothers, as important as your intellect is to our collective, please force yourself to bear with it. Yeah, I know there are a lot of other things that are striving for your attention. And Urugu has set up the system to keep us all in a state of stress, reactivity. We can't find that silent space in which we can balance things out, meditational space. There's so much noise. And Donald Trump speaking to me for a half an hour was about as noisy and trashy as it gets. But I do not regret having heard him, because the man is completely unhinged. And now when I look at other politicians, if you're not actively trying to get this unhinged man out of office, then that might be regarded as insurrection. Now, insurrection as opposed to opposing the Constitution, as opposed to insurrection because you oppose Trump.
Right. I'm going to commit to watching it. I'll do that today.
Yeah, it's really bad, brother. It's really bad. And he's all over the place, too. I didn't know what he was talking about for a while, because he's just like bouncing from A to M to Z to C to where he's all over the place, completely unhinged.
But that's his MO. He's done that. That was early on. That was one of the complaints by his supporters. He didn't stick to the script. The script, his speech writers and script people would give it to him, and he wouldn't stick to the script. And his followers and his lackeys love that. And if you look at all of his rallies when he first ran, and look at what he does now. Now, I've seen some things where he looks at a piece of paper in front of him, and he keeps the microphone right in the middle of his face. But that's been his norm.
Mm-hmm.
It seems as though also, there's a tactic in that you are literally overstimulating the executive reasoning function of the brain by just bombarding people with information that some of which apparently it seems like is not even related to each other. And yet there's just this kind of this word salad that is just being it's assaulting the mind is really how I look at it.
And the the amygdala, which is the part of the brain that deals with fear and danger and reacts to fear and danger, the amygdala is kind of overwhelmed, and it does not operate separate from the prefrontal cortex, which is attempting to make a logical sense, a cohesiveness, put it all together so I can figure out what executive decision I will make based upon what I'm hearing. The amygdala is sending out um, stress responses and reactions across the body. Our fight or flair or fight, what do they call it? Fear or flight,
Fight,
whatever.
flight,
Fight
fight,
Fight,
or
flight,
flight.
or freeze.
That's right. Of the adrenal system is out of control. We are now flooding our body internally with chemicals based upon this chaos that we're hearing and sensing, and our unfortunately we go deeper in the rabbit hole of dysfunction as a society because we have to tolerate this mess because there is a sense of order, rules-based society, and we're trying to conform to it. Personally, I think the best confirmation to an absurd society is rebellion. And anything less than outright rebellion is nonsensical and therefore becomes a part of my own self imposed kind of injury because of not rebelling against the system. Now, you and I, we stay in rebellion, and that's a good thing. And our listeners, most of them, they stay in rebellion. But we still have to deal with the larger society, our friends, our family, and the confirmation forced upon us all by the corporations.
But one of the things that we've always noticed and we've always addressed, and we called it the dumbing down of America. Well, now you have that situation is being exacerbated by some of the side effects of the COVID virus. What they're talking about, they don't talk about it a lot, but look at brain fog, where there's just disorientation. Then it spirals and gets involved with the psychological and emotional of the depression. And it gets back, from my perspective, gets back to Dr. Bobby Wright, menticide, the deliberate destruction of a people's mind. And they targeted us as Black people because we were the most hesitant and we had the most logical reasons to be suspect and skeptical about the COVID. And so they amplified their promotion and their attack on us to make us fearful, to make us think, okay, this because of this reckoning, everything is cool. When in fact, had we mean collectively maintained our right minds, we would say, well, wait a minute. Our long history here, we've experienced the exact opposite. Why should we trust these people?
That's right.
But
that's a
now
good question.
we're seeing the where, remember, what's his name? Gates's wife said, okay, let's use the George Floyd thing and all this that was going on, and we can put Blacks in the front of the line to get the vaccines.
Right.
Most people won't recall that, but go back and look at it and you'll see. And part of our situation with the brain fog is they've disconnected us, number one, because they've conditioned us to have short attention spans, but we're disconnected from our own experiences, which is tragic.
That's right.
It was John Hopkins University that also wanted to put us at the front of the line for that kill shot. And I remember Whitney Webb reporting on that. And then the other 2 points I was going to quickly mention is this panic and anxiety, this going back to Trump at Davos and his mishmash of concepts and ideas and not even knowing what he's talking about. That got revealed during the COVID psyop with a campaign that the government ran, and they hired a very exclusive PR firm to create anxiety-producing content to force people to buy into this thing. And I remember very specifically, and if I can find the article, I will. They had this one campaign in Denver where there was a lot of pushback against the injection from the indigenous and the Latino community there. So what this PR firm did is they put, with graphic design and manipulation and all that, they put a wombat's head on top of a human being. And that was part of their ad campaign. And the science, the psychological science behind that, it got revealed that it was done to confuse and to cause anxiety in the person enough so that they would just submit to the program. Now I'm gonna extend that a little bit and say, Baba Kitty, do you remember when we were talking about the George Floyd thing and how we get re-triggered every time this 24-hour news cycle brings up another young Black person, usually being struck down in the streets by a law enforcement officer? Well, now we're seeing that same thing play out. I'm gonna pivot here just for a second, but bear with me. We're seeing that same cyclical trauma trigger happen with now people who are being killed by ICE. It's the same exact tactic being used.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And that just struck me the other day when I was kind of researching some of these things, and I was like, this whole thing is anarcho-tyranny. It's mass chaos to turn the brain from a highly functioning spiritual organ to a cosmic slop, if you will, that has just been completely melted down.
Yeah, but we're seeing the Hegelian dialectic played out, crisis or problem, reaction, and then they come in with an already predetermined and planned out, quote unquote, solution.
A solution that we would never have agreed to had not been the crisis and the reaction.
Right. Without being traumatized, we would never go along with that. And you mentioned the rules-based society. That's a misnomer, because what we're seeing here, and you're seeing the Europeans particularly with Trump's actions, and they say, well, he's a threat to the rules-based. Keep in mind, the rules-based society was something they came up with because the piracy on the international seas during this 16th, 17th, 18th century was getting out of hand, and they needed some kind of way to stabilize their pillaging and plundering. So they came up with what they would call a rules-based structure. It's all about their bottom line. It's not about morality. It's not about ethics. It's not about safety. It's about, okay, how can we conduct business? It's almost like the mafia. It's about business. It's not personal. It's about business. It's a difference between that and my eye.
Right.
That's right. And what is it that they fear more than anything else? Is they fear the truth that our connection to AI, ancestral intelligence or ancestral inheritance, will trump them, no pun intended, as they are pursuing AI, artificial intelligence, to attempt to consolidate everything, which they believe AI will allow them to consolidate everything for 100 years or more. The ancestral intelligence on this planet, I suggest, is the only thing that can trump their artificial intelligence rising to everything. And even then, when they look at their own artificial intelligence, they're predicting the day that it will go super intelligent and will then rule over them, even to the point of eliminating all of us.
Well, the piece that you sent me the other day. I forgot to put in something, and you just reminded me. Your definition of AI. I meant to suggest to you to also think in terms of ancestral integrity,
That's
because
right.
we find ourselves in a situation where we're disconnected with our ancestral intelligence because of the trauma, because of the
Mm-hmm.
amnesia, the traumatized induced amnesia that we have experienced. And you talk about in your new book the epigenetics and how to restore that. But I would encourage you to include the term ancestral integrity, so that we become more in line with what our ancestors knew, and as Duara says, the natural innate problem solving genius of our people.
I agree. And I will also add to that AI ancestral inheritance, because in actuality, our great ancestors always intended for us to inherit this legacy and be stronger than their generations for having inherited. So artificial
And
intelligence becomes ancestral inheritance, ancestral integrity. We could translate that a number of ways, but it is our ancestors. We stand upon the shoulders of giants. Therefore, we are closer to the stars than any other previous generations.
I was just breaking down to a good friend of mine the other day that you know, and I've mentioned this before, but in this society, young people are taught to be anything except for like their parents and their grandparents. So there's this push for innovation, this push for modernity, this push for each generation to have their own clothing style, their own music preferences, their own slang. And that, I contend, is a very dangerous Uruguayan Eurocentric way of going about living one's life. When we are in our higher mind, when we're in our natural mind, when we are aligned to who we culturally are as a people, we are trying to become again our parents, our grandparents, our elders, our ancestors, in such a way that using AI as a quick example, that's exactly what the problem is that in their mind, AI means, in their ego, in their insecurity, being the one to create the newest, greatest, bestest thing. And for us, it's a remembering, it's a going back. It's not a going forward, it's a going back. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Maybe them calling us a backwards people was really a compliment.
Yeah, what you're talking about is tradition, Ubuntuan tradition versus progress and disconnect that Urugu's about.
Mm-hmm.
They always want to talk about how modern they are, because we can prove that they're not an ancient people. We can prove that they're Johnny come latelys. We can prove that there are no structures, pyramids, or spiritual governance structures in Europe like they were in the Afro-Asian world. Yes, they came later with the advent of Christianity and when the Moors came in, and et cetera, et cetera. But in
Mm-hmm.
terms of ancient times, prior to the influence of the South on the Aegean and Greek and Roman so-called civilization, there was nothing there prior other than the African influence. So
Mm-hmm.
this whole idea of modernity is blowing up in their faces like a wily coyote. I'm now I refer to them as like wily coyote. You know,
Mm.
it's always trying to do something, it just backfires on them.
Right.
The black swans, unintended consequences, because they don't think And even if they do think multi-generationally, it's from a Isfetian perspective. It's not from about Ubuntu.
Mm-hmm. I do see a comment, a question has come in from Brother Eddie. He is in the house. He says, bear with me, I'm looking for his question. And I don't see it. It disappeared. I'll find it in just a second. Oh, here it is. He says, ran across a few videos recently by Dr. Byron Artis, where he is saying many of the vaccines and medicines have venoms in them from snakes, lizards, snails, and other deep sea creatures. I personally feel those venoms can't be good. Can they? And I will say this much. I do know of research that does include venoms, toxins from various species, including bacteria, botulinum toxin, etc., used in research for development of pharmaceuticals and medications. But insofar as Dr. Artis is claiming that these toxic venoms are deliberately put inside the injections and vaccines, I've seen nothing to allow me to comprehend that in the context that you write it. So at this particular point, without having any evidence to the contrary, I would say it's probably a medical hoax. And the medical hoax could be coming from people who don't like what Dr. Byron Artis has to say about natural health, etc., and just put it out there that, well, he's saying this, in actuality, that could just be a fraud. So it makes very little logical sense to me, although I will say that I have seen the use of these toxins, etc., as vectors for accomplishing other things that the pharmaceutical companies, want to master and use them to further assault all of us. I hope I didn't confuse you too much with that, Brother Eddie. I doubt it, but at the same time, there is reason to believe that these people are doing such research.
Yeah, I've read Dr. Byron Artis's book. I can't off the top of my head remember if he explicitly stated that there were these venoms inside of the COVID-19 injections, but I think he was making the case for the side effects resulting from the injections do seem to mimic a lot of the hyperinflation that is a direct result of what happens when someone does encounter venom in their bloodstream. And so I believe that his way of treating it, because he does have a very strict regimen of how to kind of detoxify from the injections, and I believe he's thinking of it along the same lines as how one should treat venom from a poisonous animal like a snake or a scorpion, etc.
And you use the term hyperinflation. Did you mean hyperinflammation?
I'm sorry. Yes, I meant hyperinflammation. Excuse me.
No problem. No problem. The tongue and the brain sometimes disconnect inside of my body quite a bit. And he says also, Brother Dwara, forgive me if I misspelled your name wrong, and that's okay. He's in the house. They do seem to continue to put fear in us with all of these events, even the weather events. And I do agree that fear, triggering hyperbole, etc., is a distinct technique used by psychological warfare. And they figure by triggering these intense reactions in all of us, it makes us easier to control.
At one time, this was several years ago, but I was looking at news headlines and I was looking at new movie releases. And the theme was very clear to me that almost everything that comes out is doom and gloom of some sort, to, in my personal opinion, to induce through psychological warfare, to induce panic, to induce anxiety, to induce fear. Fear is the mind killer. And so just real quick, I remember some of the things I was seeing is that, alien invasions or hostile extraterrestrial forces, natural disasters, uh, medical pandemics, and remember that movie Contagion came out quite a long time ago, an outbreak even before that. So
Mm-hmm.
a lot, and then the news headlines, wars and rumors of wars. Um, there is this constant assault on the mind,
Mm-hmm.
and that is why I love what's going to be coming out in your new book, Bible, because I mean, man, if there ever was a remedy for combating this assault on the mind, this new book is going to have it for sure. I'm very excited about it.
Yeah. Well, I'm excited to bring it to people. I expect to be bringing it right at the beginning of Black History Month. And also, well, I have a whole campaign based upon Black History Month. It's actually going to last for 2 months since Black History Month is the shortest month of the year. So I'm attaching March to the Black History, the shortest month. I'll make it twice as long by adding March to it as well.
I'll stay.
You know,
It's interesting. Go ahead.
we push and they push back, so we push back twice as hard.
It's interesting. Duar brought up a situation about their so-called entertainment industry. A lot of their movies was about invasions, alien invasions. All that is
Mm-hmm.
a reforming of their own history.
Exactly.
When you go back and look at, and I'm not just talking about the so-called modern Europeans. I'm talking about their immediate ancestors, the Huns, the Goths, the Vandals, the Jutes, the Normans, all of those people. That's what they did. These were the
Mm.
people who brought down the Roman Empire, which they view as their greatest example of imperial governance, because they was pretty much controlled the Mediterranean and a lot of Western Asia that they call Europe. That's nothing more than a projection of their own value, where they have these imaginary aliens coming down to just take over Earth, subjugate the Earthlings, and steal the resources. A great book, a great counter to that is that movie, They Live.
They live. Yeah.
Mm. That was one of my
So
favorite movies.
yeah, that's an awesome motion picture.
Yeah.
So
And
we
the
need to understand what they're doing, what they're attempting to do to us. And the other thing is a lot of it is predictive programming.
That's
Exactly.
right.
Exactly.
Now, there is a movie produced by, I think Ryan Googler is his name, I think.
Kugler.
Correct me if I'm wrong. Googler.
Kugler.
Kugler. Thank you for correcting that. The movie called Sinners.
Mm.
Have both of you had the opportunity now to watch Sinners?
I haven't seen it from beginning to end. It's always when I turn it on, the streaming is streaming currently, and I haven't seen it from the beginning to the end.
Mm-hmm.
It
Dwara, have
was
you had a chance?
it was recommended to me 5 times now. The last one being just yesterday. I've got it on my list for this Blizzard weekend.
Yeah, well, this past week I did watch Sinners, and
Okay.
maybe it might have been last weekend. The movie is, I don't necessarily think we have to worry about spoiler alert here on LIBRadio. It's all spoiler alert in dealing with Urugu.
Mm.
But the movie is very passionate. It's woven into African ancestry, African spirituality, etc. But the basis of the movie is the vampire, the blood sucking beast. I'm wondering, did that movie have messages in it that would be positive for us? Or was this movie greenlighted by Urugu in a system that is entire to suck the spirituality out of Africans and replace it with this Urugu mindset that they created for us to deplete us from our ancestral connection and make us vulnerable? The movie got more Academy Award nominations than I think maybe any other movie, definitely of the
Right.
year
In history. In
in
history.
history. You got all of these nominations. So we don't control those nominations, do we, Baba Junius?
No. And I was going to ask you, because there's a character in the movie, the sister who is into African spirituality.
Mm-hmm.
I see her, like I said, I haven't seen the whole movie. I see her, she's there when they confront the vampires. I don't, from my perspective, I'm just asking you, since you've seen it, does she play a prominent role in how the movie ends, or how whatever happens to the vampires as they try to battle the vampires?
She plays a very significant character that protects us from the vampires.
Right, right.
And
But
that
I mean,
ancestral
she was
connection
there.
that she brings forward in the movie is definitely positive for the integrity of the characters surviving.
Okay, does she? Because you raised that issue, because there are subliminal messages in there. There
Mm-hmm.
are psychological points that Urugu wants to bring out, which will allow them to green light or allow them to intervene and deal with some of the screenwriting or whatever and the visuals. So does she survive? Because I haven't seen the whole picture.
I'm not going to spoil that one.
Papa
Okay.
Junius is like, just get to the point. Did she survive, or did they kill her off?
We survived because of her in and amongst us and on our team. I'll just leave it at that.
Okay. Okay.
Mm,
All right.
okay.
Queen Mother Kashiba is in the house. She writes, "You are so right, Mr. D. Dwara, regarding the relationship between parents and grandparents, intergeneration, I think she means the progression of thought and acts that they are mimicking from Uruguay." I think does it mean Urugu? Do you understand the point?
Yeah. I think sometimes these autocorrects are crazy, and they don't recognize.
Right.
They don't have. I spend 5 minutes on a very simple text message, because I try to use as many African words as I can, and I'm just the message just gets bungled. But I appreciate the comment, and I think that intergenerational connection has been scientifically, medically found to improve the cognitive ability. So children who grow up with their grandparents as well as their parents. And then I had a conversation with a friend of mine, and we were trying to figure out, why is that? Like, what's kind of the deeper kind of logical science behind that? And we were thinking that the grandparents have already raised children, and so they're aware of what works and what doesn't work. Whereas, oftentimes parents, they're new to it, and so they're doing the best they can, but they don't have that luxury of hindsight like a grandparent does. And
But
so
the other thing is, in those societies, tradition is paramount. So they look to what the previous generation did,
right,
and they venerate that, and that becomes like a template, a societal template. Whereas coming out of Europe, you have Urugu with this whole notion of individualism and disconnectedness, and now with the capitalism, with progress, so that you can enhance your bottom line, that negates all our ancestral wisdom.
And that's directly tied to what we mentioned so oftentimes here, is the colonial play, the colonial tactic of removing the children from the parents, the grandparents, the elders, the village, and subverting that or replacing that with an alternative paradigm, which is exactly what AI and Google and social media, so-called social media, is doing for our children. They're not running to Uncle Jamal. They're not running to Tia Bintu. They're going on Google. Real quick story. I had a friend of mine who was wanting to research some of her ancestral legacy, and some of her family came from down south, and they were all downstairs visiting from the south. The oldest one was 100 years old, and I'm on the phone. I'm on the phone with her, and she's Googling, trying to remember the name of the town that she thought they were from. I had to stop her and say, listen, please go downstairs and talk to them directly. Why are you on Google trying to figure out information that only they who are in your house right now downstairs going to be able to give you? So this disconnect is happening, and we need to fix it, because they did this during COVID too. Only trust the trusted messengers, they called them. Trusted messengers. Don't listen to Uncle Joe. He's crazy. Listen to us.
And not only trusted messengers, but they had essential workers. So they divided society into these tiers. Essential workers. So if you didn't fit into that category, you were non-essential. So what does that do to your psyche?
Exactly.
That's right.
So I don't count. I don't mean anything.
Exactly.
Now, and they also attached privileges to those distinctions.
Right.
Essential workers.
It was a two-tiered society.
Yeah,
a multi-tiered society.
Essential workers were given privileges that the non-essential weren't given, but the essential workers also had to conform first of all. And that injection, the confirmation to that injection, many of those essential workers later really regretted having had to conform to that. I've talked to people personally, and they said, yeah, I had to take the injections. I had to conform because I was an essential worker. Later to regret it and say, what can I do to get this out of my system? We did come up with a formula for people to detoxify themselves. Although, how do we detoxify ourselves from these malformed proteins, misfolded proteins that cause these long-term, very, very damaging autoimmune disorders, and even worse?
Makiti, to add insult to injury, a lot of as it went on, a lot of the quote unquote essential workers were kicked to the curb.
Yeah.
They were,
that's right,
in essence, deplatformed, or they were kicked down to a lower level in society.
That's right, because they were listening to persons like us, giving them access to information, because many of them are so busy with their essential work that they don't have time to read and explore and learn the things that you and I spend time exploring and learning. So when they listen to us, I had no small number of instances where people came back to me and say, wow, I didn't know that, although I coulda, woulda, shoulda, because of the position I was in.
Or just from our history being here. That was the most insidious thing that they did. They disconnected us from our own experiences. They made us negate our own experiences at their hand. And,
that's right.
They did it through fear.
And they do that on a much wider scale to all of us. In this particular case, it was COVID. And they do that particularly to foster self-doubt. I never, ever doubted myself for the research that I did. But a lot of people who I would talk to, the self-doubt would then be expressed in them saying, well, that sounds interesting. It might sound logical. I don't have time to explore it, but I'm now going to believe it.
But it's self-doubt in the now, but it's also insidious because we're negating our experiences. We're negating
Mm-hmm.
our ancestral experiences. We're
Our
negating
ancestral
our,
inheritance.
right.
And the integrity of that inheritance. We are live and direct here today. We welcome each and every one of you. Your comments and questions, we love them. We love bouncing your ideas off of our brains as well. So do tell your friends and tell their friends. I'm trying to see what we can do to increase the size of our audiences back to what it was before the plunge. We were up to double the size of our audiences today that we have today. Let's double it again. We have to put in work on something. Brothers, we have to, as a collective, we must work at something. What about if we have a forum called the Mastermind? We turn it into a real live mastermind think tank that could work on behalf of all African people across the diaspora and across the continent. It could work.
It could work. It should work, and it fosters what we talked about last week: the importance of self-reliance. You see, we have, and I don't want to, I don't want to be too hard on our people, but
Mm-hmm.
we have gotten in this malaise, in this stupor, as Baba Junius reminds us, in that we are expecting someone else to save us. It doesn't work.
Mm.
We need to be in the practice, in the habit, in the implementation of coming together as a people, putting our differences aside, and again, the practice, the habit, the implementation of solving our own problems and coming together. One of my favorite proverbs is, a thought in the mind does not guard the weaver bird from eating the crops. And so that's to suggest that someone may know the remedy to keep the weaver bird from eating all and destroying all the crops. But if that person doesn't share it, if they don't speak that thought to other people in the village, so to speak, then it's useless. And so we must come together at the very least, we must come together and we must talk about these things. And that is what the mastermind panel is.
That's right. And it's necessary, it's a necessary platform for the larger community, although the larger community pretty much doesn't know who we are and what we do. It is still critically necessary for the integrity, and I personally think it would be better off if the larger community was aware of who we are and what we do, although there is the risk that if our people find out about it on a large scale, then the Urugu forces will be forced to neutralize this.
Well, I don't think you can neutralize something that I don't think you can neutralize something that is small and organic and that is built upon the notion of solving our own problems. Maybe
That's
I'm
right.
being naive. But please, Babas, correct me if I'm wrong.
Well, you are being naive, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. Is that
Okay.
believing in the true potential of yourself? Some might call that naive. Others might call it holding on to sanity.
Mm, 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 mm.
There's a
Ashe.
couple of comments have come
The
in.
other thing is we have to realize that Urugu is playing a zero-sum game
Mm.
within the context of game theory.
Mm-hmm.
They have taken it to another level where they are attempting to structure the field and the game so that when they win, everyone else loses, and they lose badly. Meaning, there's devastation, there's plunder, pillage, there's desecration, the desacredization of us as divine beings. That's what happens when they win.
Mm-hmm.
So that's their goal.
I do see a couple of comments have come in. For African rights, Toni Morrison's essay, Making America White Again, close quote, reminds me who the most fearful people are. Surely, shooting a fleeing black man in the back hurts the presumption of white strength only the frightened, right? And yeah, I think you're absolutely right. And their fears, unfortunately, are so great that they place those fears on all of the rest of us. Shooting that black man in the back is a sacrifice, a blood sacrifice that is necessary to preserve this presumption of ultimately white supremacy, because we all therefore have to fear that they will do that to us. They did that during the days of enslavement. They would whip the black man in front of everyone else. The whole village or a plantation would gather, and they'd be forced to watch this black man whipped to an inch of his life or even to death. And
Oh,
instilled a fear in all of them, and that fear became epigenetic trauma passed then through the DNA in the future generations.
well, they did much worse. They would bring the buck. They called it breaking the buck. They would bring out a strong person, or they would bring out someone who was resistant, and they would sodomize them. Not just beat them with a whip. They would sexually sodomize them, and
Or
that,
sodomize them with an instrument, a deadly instrument.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. So that is in our DNA, ancestral DNA memory, our intelligence. And
Mm-hmm.
oftentimes it's been used with fear to break our resistance, or to
Yeah.
attempt to break our resistance, because they've never successfully done that.
That's right. That's right. A couple more comments have come in. We do see Brother Eddie. He said, these new parents have to compete with all the books and videos that are showing them how to raise their children. Many are afraid if they discipline their children, they will scar their childhood. And yeah, we got to be careful about these new books that we're reading. And personally, when it comes to raising African children, I suggest that we screen Urugu's thoughts and ideas out of it, because many of them, childbearing age women, are not bearing children. So now they're writing books and tell you and I how to raise our children. And we thank you, Bob, as he writes, very much for helping us to see and understand the things these incomplete beings are doing. Thank you, thank you, thank you. We appreciate you. And there are more comments coming in. And I'm just, Oseo Kamal is in the house. He said, this is one of your best shows. I just got out of the hospital and with heart failure, and I never had gotten sick like this until we were forced to take a jab to keep our positions at work. And I want you to contact me because there's a certain condition, I can't think of the name right now, it begins with an A, amyloidosis. I want you to look up this word. Look up, and put it in quotations, amyloidosis, amyloidosis, and its connection to the COVID jab. I want
But
you to look
King,
that up. And
in addition
also,
to
I will
that,
say, please, Osale, contact me. Because as far as I know, there is no one else in the black community that has addressed the link between amyloidosis and the COVID jab. You were saying, Papa Juniors?
there's a commercial, and I can't remember the product, but that's one of the side effects. You know how they talk at the end of the commercial, so and so may occur. Amyloidosis is one of them. I forgot what the product is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think I've seen that commercial. It's not a word that's used very regularly. It essentially translates to misfolded proteins or tangled proteins, amyloidosis. But amyloidosis can happen inside of our heart tissues. And these misfolded proteins inside the heart tissues are very, very serious, can lead to death, and it can also lead to Alzheimer's disorder and disease. And I'm trying to remember how to spell it. I think it's AMYLOIDOSIS. I may have spelled it wrong again, but yeah, that's going to find it. That's AMYLOIDOSIS, amyloidosis. And we do see Sister Sandra Muhammad is in the house. She's in the YouTube family. She says, put it in the chat. Amyloidosis. Okay, I'll put that in the chat so you can have access to it too. And I'll put that up right now. Here, one sec. Okay. And where are we at? What are we looking at? We haven't talked at all about anything really happening outside of America, even though the COVID pandemic affected the entire world. But we had a conversation this week. A brother was on LIBRadio, Brother Samal, and he is from Kenya. And at the time of the pandemic, when the pandemic was hitting the worst impact on the world, so to say, he found himself in Tanzania, where the president of the country, John Pemba Magufuli, had created a formula along with the president of Madagascar that they use to essentially boost the immune systems and protect their people from the COVID virus. And therefore, their people did not need to take the jab. And he talked about while he was in Tanzania, they didn't act, they went on as if it never even existed anywhere in the world, as if there was no pandemic declaration. And in the conversation, I told him that I was in Uganda at the same time he was in Tanzania, and Uganda was just the exact opposite of the reaction of Tanzania. Uganda panicked and shut down the government. It was crazy being there.
Well, keep in mind that there were major pressure put on President Magufuli, number one, because he mocked them in public and exposed them.
Right, the testing.
It just exposed them and made them look silly. And I believe he had a PhD in chemistry, right?
I don't recall that. I did write about that whole development of COVID organics, they call their product, but I didn't do a deeper background check into
but
who
I'm
was
just saying his
Magufuli.
background was in science.
I think I did see that.
So, and the fact checkers, when you use these propaganda promotion devices that they call fact checking, His Excellency was, in my view, murdered.
Yeah.
And there were several other Caribbean or South American and African leaders that also transitioned, and it just coincidentally they were opposed to the World Economic Forum, WHO, Gates, cabal, COVID policies. So again, zero-sum game.
Yeah. A zero-sum game that our African leadership has not educated itself really to compete in. I'm not saying that they're totally ignorant of this whole process of game theory, but game theory is really sophisticated. I've been threatening to teach it, but I don't even know if I want to teach it to our people across the diaspora. Quite simply, I'm kind of pessimistic, as if our people can even put together a team to compete.
Well,
correct me if you think I'm wrong.
I'd say it's going to be small, and it's not going to be everybody. But then again, we look at the Meiji Restoration of the Japanese Empire. I was 8 emperors that came together and ushered in the Meiji Restoration. And similarly, it was a handful of English invaders that came to this country, and look at the damage that caused. So we can perhaps come together, a small group of us, and be the tip of the spear.
Ashe. I do agree. The new book I have coming out is intended to project just that. The idea that a few people tactically, strategically organizing their resources to leverage that resources to get more and more and leverage that to get more and more. That's a central premise in this. Also, a very central premise of the book is we've got to calm the distortion, the chaos, the noise. The deep blue, as I refer to it in the book, is
Mm-hmm.
inside each and every one of us. That will cool us down and allow us to separate ourselves from the chaos and the madness all around us.
I say the Yoruba refer to it as omi tutu, the cool water that keeps us calm, that keeps our character gentle, that reminds us that we need to tread through life carefully. I've got some notes that I got to send you via email, Baba. So those will be in my notes. I got your email, and I appreciate you.
Well, I appreciate, love you too for what you do. Baba Junius, you were very quick to respond with some excellent suggestions and contributions. And I'm going to give you two brothers credit for this book as well.
Oh, shit.
Well, your message was that was a sense of urgency. So I said, okay, let me get on it. You get
Yeah,
right on
yeah.
it.
Well, you were very responsive, and I most certainly thank you, thank you, thank you for your sense of urgency. This, I consider, is the book at the particular time we're at right now. I think that this is the book that can give us a great advantage if we can create a mass, a critical mass, a vanguard that will move.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
Ashe. So,
I said,
Queen Mother did ask me to remind everybody of a comment she put earlier in the program. She wrote, "Do you think that the story of Burkina Faso's coup plotters located in Togo is true? In short, is short-term former president of Burkina Faso guilty of this deed?" And I'll be honest with you, I have not necessarily been paying close attention. There's so many coups, threats of coups, rumors of coups, fake news about coups,
mm,
etc., happening with Burkina Faso that I kind of have tuned it out because it's noise, and I'm tuning out as much noise as I possibly can out of my life, out of my head, so I can concentrate on the solution. So I apologize, Queen Mother, if you sent me information that I should have been paying attention to. I apologize. Please resend it, and I will see the urgency that you want me to look at that. But at the same time, brothers, like I say, I'm trying to devalue the noise, to turn the noise down. And I'm
mm-hmm.
getting a lot of this stuff.
Well, I mean,
It's
that's, go
go
ahead,
ahead.
Bob.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
I was just going to say that that's part of it is our attention, our focus is being, and our vital life force really is being pulled from us and sucked into these devices. And does anyone contemplate anymore? Does anyone use self-reflection and introspection? Not if you're on a device all day and you're constantly giving your currency, your energy outside of you instead of keeping some of that in you and going within. And
Mm-hmm.
that you're addressing in the new book, thankfully. Not that you haven't addressed it before, but that for me really is the key, is to go back inside. Because if these technological systems that Urugu is obsessively trying to create and get us all addicted to, if that is pulling our focus and our attention outside of us, then for me, we must go back in. That is going to be part
Mm-hmm.
of the antidote.
Yeah, no doubt. And when you look at our people's attempts to address social decay, social collapse, how we've been traumatized through colonization and enslavement. But even prior to that, the options were inner growth versus outer manipulation, meaning these external laws, you adhere to these external laws versus inner development. So you go back to the African mastery schools, African values, where just understanding a greeting like Hotep, where you're extending and offering and hoping that the person you're greeting is experiencing inner peace, which our Kemetan ancestors said was the most valuable state we could experience. That we'd have this inner peace, and we would conduct our lives based on this inner peace that was an outgrowth of Ubuntu and Ma'at. And so it becomes part of an age-old millennia debate, so to speak. Do you try to do mass manipulation and re-engineering, or do you teach people the principles of self-governance, self-mastery, and develop your society that way?
And now getting back to Queen Mother's direct question about Burkina Faso, I will admit that many times when I'm researching what is critical to Africa's self-interest, I have kind of default websites that I will go to, such as allafrica.com or africaninsider.com, and I will see, is there a prioritization of this in their lead stories? And I'm looking at both of those sites right now, and I do not see a link that says Burkina Faso at its headline. Now, I know both of these media outlets well enough to know that if something happening in Burkina Faso is very important, they will include it as a lead story, because both of them embrace and support the revolution, the Thomas Sankara revolution, with, of course, Ibrahim Traore now manifesting it in this time. So if it's not in a headline there, I probably won't see it.
Right. And I'm starting to use the africareport.com now. And I went on there today to have some ideas for today's program, and I didn't see anything about that. Now there is a story that it was a recent arrest.
Yeah, I just
there of someone who was accused of plotting and being seditious, but I didn't see that on the Africa Report.
And one report that I did want to emphasize for today's show that was reported, and that is the most recent election now has just taken place in Uganda. And once again, it's rather predictable at this point. Yoweri Museveni has been reelected with a huge majority of the vote. And once again, as is predictable, Bobby Wine is complaining the elections to be a fraud. Bobby Wine does not get much attention inside of Uganda, but he does carry some weight. But he is beloved by the British press, the American press. They love Bobby Wine. Bobby Wine is their quote unquote boy in Africa, using that boy term deliberately.
Not surprising. See, for me, looking at Africa, keeping in mind that it is the second largest landmass on this planet, is the home of humanity, the home of high civilizations, the home of the first centralized government. And then you try to juxtapose that with what we see on the continent now, the so-called democratization and democracy. And I realized coming out of the scramble for Africa, the disruption and all of that, that these leaders are faced with monumental problems. But I think, and I know it's difficult and I haven't figured out how to do it, they have to go back to prior to the lines that disrupted the continent, these imaginary borders, these lines that destroyed or separated ethnic and cultural groupings, and try to find some common ground that you can use our history, because we had regions that they call empires that were greater than all of Western Europe. So we've demonstrated it can be done. You can have righteous governance. It's just how the question becomes, how do you do it in this age of Urugu?
That becomes a key critical question that must be responded, because there is an answer to that question. The answer will be configured to the peculiarities of our situation. The book I'm writing is called The Conscious Roots. And when we look at this word roots, the image is of a tree and its roots extending into the earth. The earth becomes the memory, the holder of all of our memories, and these roots all tap into specific points in the earth where the nutrients necessary for that tree's life and vitality, the growing and the preparing of fruit for the next generations, are all coming up through its roots. So if we're looking to answer these questions about wherein lies our solutions, the conscious roots becomes very critically necessary. That's a major theme of my upcoming book. And I think you could probably tell that in going into this new solution-based themes or set of themes, I actually reverted back in my own personal life to when I became the conscious Rasta. And I use the metaphor of Rastafari and the doctrine of Rastafari and that discovery, which it was for me. Quite a bit of themes of the book are related to the ascendance of Rastafari.
You know, the other thing that is interesting to note is that studies have proven that the interneural, if I can call it that, the interneural interconnection of roots beneath the soil are what trees use to communicate with each other. And so that's a network, that's an ancestral network, an ancestral communication system. And I love that metaphor of how by going back to the roots, obviously. And Tony Browder had Baba Tony Browder had a very deep quote. He said, and he was talking about our hair, our roots. He said, no matter how much you dye it, fry it, tease it, and try to make it lay flat and straight, the roots always go back to Africa.
That's right.
And also the roots provide the function that they hold the soil together.
So, they hold its soil together. That's a good point.
So that's a key function, in addition to the communication and the anchoring. They also help their surrounding environment by dealing with the water and also dealing with holding the soil together, because we saw what happened when they deforested Haiti, and that resulted in the mudslides and the floods.
And then you could take it to ancient Kemet too, where the desert was considered Isfet, where no life can grow. And Ma'at could be symbolized by that harmony, that balance between the trees working together to hold the soil. Because what happens, to Baba Junior's point, what happens if all the trees die? Desertification.
Right. And it was also in close cooperation with the Nile, the annual flooding of the Nile, but just the Nile itself being a source of moisture.
Shoot.
And it's funny. The thing is, Urugu takes truth and distorts it. So, for example, climate change is real in the sense that we've seen ice ages, we've seen desertification, we've seen it where there were certain areas in Africa that were vibrant, green, lush, and all that, and over millennia, they've turned into deserts. And like I always say, the earth is a living organism. It's part and parcel of this divine ecosystem. Because if it weren't, we wouldn't be here. We couldn't survive.
Mm-hmm.
And we need to, because Urugu has, as you point out in your book, defined reality as this mechanistic process.
Right.
So it's devoid, it's disconnected from the creator. So how do you have a machine and not reference the inventor or the producer or the creator of the machine? So these godless beings have projected something on that's totally silly. There's an African proverb that no one has to teach a child about God. I mean, these people are sick. And that's their incompleteness. They refuse to acknowledge, like in the roots thing, they held the baby up, behold, the only thing greater than thyself. They refuse to acknowledge that.
Mm-hmm.
Because they think they're the greatest thing. They're the usurpers.
Right.
They're the Sethians. They're the Luciferians.
And they think that their religions are the only proper pathway to us understanding, connecting with, and living in that great divinity, which we know is at the top of it all. So, therefore, I mean, we look at the evidence, we can't help it. We look at the evidence that the ones most deeply sucked into the paradigm also most deeply uphold that religion. I'm not going to name the religion. I don't want to offend our listeners, but everybody knows what I'm talking about. It's not just that religion, but that religion is connected to two other Abrahamic religions. And all of them thoroughly have confused society.
Well, yes, they have confused society, but I think from our perspective in game theory and zero sum, we have to look at what their motivations are. Yes, there are legitimate people who are about service, who are in their clergy and their hierarchy. But the people who, particularly when you're looking at the religion that you're talking about, when it was embraced by the Roman Empire, it was all about control. It was all about giving a common belief system throughout the empire, because they had all these very similar but competing belief systems that they wanted to usurp and put their stamp on. And at its core, when you look at them versus Kemet or the Nile Valley or other African spiritual traditions, there's a fundamental difference.
That's right. The fundamental difference is that somehow connected as to why the Greeks did not disrespect us, but the Romans disrespected us so much that they burned the great library at Alexandria 3 times, 3 separate times. And then for centuries afterwards, they still kept dismantling and destroying and covering up the evidence that the Africans and other groups around the world had deep spiritual systems that connected to all aspects of their beings. Isn't that why the Romans worked so hard to destroy everything that we knew before them?
Right. Because our worldview, our cosmology, would pose a major threat to their empire.
But
they not only destroyed, look what they did to the Gnostics and some of those early groups where they had to suppress them too.
And that's how ugly of a game they play, is that those religions wouldn't even exist if it weren't for our spiritual systems. And then they invented something totally contrary to those spiritual systems by way of the three Abrahamic religions, if you will. And then the
Mm-hmm.
burning of the Library of Alexandria, etc., etc., was to destroy the truth that that's where theirs originally came from.
Mm-hmm.
But not only did they destroy the physical libraries, they killed the priests and the teachers. They left one alive and forced him to give them the history of the mastery schools and the history of the Kemetan dynasties.
They
I
said
mean, they're crazy.
those priests were scraping the fat and the muscle tissue with oyster shells from Hypatia's bones.
Mm. Wow. Deep breath. Imagine the deep
That's right.
color blue,
Mm.
wherein lies our peace and our calmness and our comfort. And let's proceed to move forward. We got about 10 more minutes, so let's put solutions, calls to action on the table.
Well, I don't want to be a spoiler,
Mm-hmm.
but your new book offers
Yes.
a very viable solution. Number one, it looks at the situation. You have, I don't know how the final layout is going to be, but you have the side-by-side comparison between the Uruguayan, and this is not what you call it, these are my words,
Mm-hmm.
Uruguayan setup and system versus the African system.
Mm-hmm.
And you show the differences and offer the benefits of addressing and adopting and adapting to the African system. And I think that will be a major contribution, particularly in times like these, where this system is in its death throes, so they think they have to just go buck wild in order to survive.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And the danger I see in putting together such a comprehensive telling of this story, our story, is that we'll be the last to realize what the book really truly is intended to do, what its meaning is. And those Urugu forces we often refer to, they will be the first to find out about it and use it as part of their technology, their game theory strategies to further keep us unbalanced. I still have to put the book out. If nothing else, I have to complete this book for my own edification, for me to talk to myself constantly, because I will be reading the book every day. I'm going to be reading the book tomorrow and the next day on LIBRadio. I will be reading this book every day for the rest of my extended lifespan.
Yeah, and more than likely, what we're seeing, like several years ago, we saw the popularization of the word Ubuntu,
Mm-hmm.
not by African people, but by Europeans.
Mm.
And I say all that's well and good, but you have to understand from my perspective, Desmond Tutu, who was one of the main propagators of the word and explained it to the West,
Mm-hmm.
he was trained and brainwashed into the Anglican Church. So he's lost
That's right.
a lot of the real deep, fundamental overstanding, as you put out in your book, overstanding of what Ubuntu really is.
That's right. I do reference Desmond Tutu's writings in the book. He is in the bibliography. And yes, he becomes an ultimate example of it's not hypocrisy, but the contradiction between who he organically senses he is and what he's connected to and what we are all connected to, how he qualifies himself to be teaching us, and at the same disqualifies himself by believing in the Anglican Church.
Well, again, that's that political clash, that clash of civilizations, a clash of values that
And the
we're all
paradox of, I call it the paradox of being.
right, that we're all experiencing. He's just a person that's in the public eye. All of us are dealing with this.
That's right. Is Desmond Tutu worthy of loving and being loved?
Certainly.
I'd say absolutely, beyond a
Right.
shadow of a doubt.
Right.
But at the same time, we have to be skeptical of what lessons he's teaching at any given time.
But that's something, that's an assertion that they can level against all of us. You, me, Dewar, all of us.
It's true.
Mm-hmm.
And we're just
A
trying
couple
to
of
find our way back to sanity. That's really the key.
Yeah, we're recovering Negroes.
And I do see in the comments from 4 Africa 1, she writes, I love Brother Keaty's blueprint. It's 2 words instead of 1. I like that. You put something profound there. I love his blueprint for wholeness image. I want it in poster form. It is absolutely gorgeous. Yeah, I did share the poster that I put together using help from Notebook LM. I will admit that. And I put together the poster. And I'm going to go ahead and make this poster formal and put it out there. Some would say also make it like a mat for when we eat, laminated, make it like a table. What do they call those table? You know what I'm talking about. Placemat. There, right. That even the children could therefore learn from it, from a placemat that they eat from. Maybe a whole commercial line could be developed around the new book and transformative. See, and Gus, I see you a coloring book. That's a great idea. Thank you. Gus is writing, is what's happening in Minneapolis off limits for discussion? No, it must be on limits for discussion. We may have to go a little bit over time today. But what is happening in Minneapolis? Do we understand it?
It's just a continuation, in my view, of what happened on some levels, of what happened with the George Floyd situation.
That's right.
Where you have something. Now, keep in mind, Floyd was a localized issue, whereas what's going on there now is Trump pushing his agenda using ICE as a means to do several things. Number one, to reinforce his narrative about immigrants being threats to American society. Number two is to get our people used to seeing militarized units and agencies on our streets. And this will be part and parcel of his move as he continues to violate the Constitution. And keep in mind the optics, and then I'll power down the optics of these mass guys coming in there. And what we're seeing is a clash of narratives, but somewhere in there, there's this truth that some of these people aren't the vicious criminals that Trump portrays them to be. And so this is part and parcel of a major psyop to prepare us for the militarization, because he's in violation of the Posse Comitatus Act. He's in violation of the fact that most of the governors of these cities that he's sending these troops to haven't requested his help, nor have the mayors. He's lying about or distorting the situation in terms of crime there. And it's easy for him to get away with it because it's the other. It's people of color. In this case, they're people from basically Central and South America, Mexico, what have you. But it won't be long before we become the targets. It won't be long before other people become the target, just like the gypsies, the crippled, homosexuals, and some Ashkenazim were the targets of Hitler.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. We're going to have to move forward. We have another few minutes. We're going to begin to wrap it up. I do see a question has come into from the YouTube listening audience. Eddie is in the house. He said, I just had a childhood friend to pass around the age of 57 years. Young, I say. They had been fighting blood clots and recently had brain swelling until they passed. Could this have been the amyloidosis? And I say, yes, amyloidosis was another circumstances. The last I wrote thromboidosis, and I had to spell it again. Blood clotting is also a symptom of the toxic COVID injection. Thromboidosis. And that was the blood clotting. We saw a huge number of deaths occurring, especially sudden deaths among young people who were athletes, etc. They died of sudden blood clotting, and thromboidosis was a known factor with the mRNAs before they even injected them into people. They began the injections around around January. Was it 2021? I think it was, maybe 2022, 2021.
Real late 2020.
Yeah.
They
So they
rolled it
began.
out. They rolled it
They
out.
rolled it out. So in January, we started seeing these unusual deaths of these young people popping up all over the place. And that was the consequence of that. But in December of the previous year, I read an article. The article was written by the head of the Department of Health and Human Services, Dr. Donald Francis, that talked about a consequence of mRNA technology, which was being proposed to rewrite people's DNA through these injections. He said thromboidosis was something that they would be alerted to, that the incidence of thromboidosis would increase. A month later now, the evidence starts showing up.
Well, even before that, if people had done the research on mRNA, they would have discovered that it's not brand new. It wasn't something that just
That's right.
was part of Operation Warp Speed. The people who were doing the research on it originally used it as a treatment for cancer. But what they found was the lab animals died disproportionately. So they shelved it. And when they were coming up with some idea how to, because again, this was a PSYOP, it was a multifaceted operation with the military, the big financial people, and the media. They pulled it off the shelf and then said, voila, we have this new technology. It had been, no, it was there, and they knew they couldn't get it passed. And the research and the investigations are showing, using Pfizer's own documents, they knew it was lethal when they put it out.
And now, because of the URA, the emergency use EUA, emergency use authorization, the testing of it was highly truncated, and they could rush it through the market. These corporations.
They also granted immunization not only to the corporations but to also some of their executives.
So now they cannot be sued because of the law.
Immunity. Right. Yeah.
So we are nearing the end of the program. I'm going to share a little bit. Brother Eddie is in the house. He writes, Brother Keaty, the 2 chapters you shared Friday were great. Just listening brings on a calmness and overstanding. And those 2 ideas, calmness and the overstanding, are very prominent in the new book. The new book is called The Conscious Roots, and it talks about heritage. Let me I got still remembering the title myself. Conscious Roots. It's dealing with growth, heritage, and the biology of being. And I really, really got a lot out of that subtitle, Growth, Heritage, and the Biology of Being. The book is in 3 major sections, each dealing with the processes of growth, heritage, and where we come from is very important, and the biology of being. We create bridges between the science, the molecular science, cellular science, which is all backing this book up, and we connect all of that to being humans, being an apex amalgamation. Or begin with the concept that we've been taught by Western science to think of the body as mechanical. But no, we restore the idea that the body is a temple complex made up of 37 trillion conscious beings. Each cell that makes up our body has a world into itself. And so 37, think about 37 trillion conscious beings all existing in complementary harmony and working for the one. That's a very powerful spiritual concept.
Ultima, absolutely.
And also, the thing is that you point out that they're working in concert based on an intelligence, based on a unique model for each person who comes into the world. And my suggestion was that you incorporate the notion of divine intelligence and energy into that explanation, because that's what it is. And cancer, in many ways, on a philosophical way, is nothing more than rebellion against this divine energy intelligence within the body. It's like a microcosm of your rugu in your body.
Yeah.
Wow.
And I would add to that, if I may humbly, that it's the calcification of that isfet that you have not gotten out of your body that turns into a tumor.
That calcification. I do talk about calcification in the course of the biology of being, but now bridging that, creating a bridge between that and cancer, that's a very powerful idea you've expressed there, Brother Dwyer. And I'm grateful. I'm going to use your brother's ideas in the book to the best of my abilities. Because I am, because we are. We are because we are. Ubuntu.
Before we go, I want to share something that happened on Thursday. Back in 2025, Donald Trump signed an executive order which he was designed to attack, review, evaluate, and remove any instances of what he called exhibits, institutions that made America look bad or disparage American history. He gave a deadline for September 17th for this to be done. In the interim, there were people who were taking action to deal with it, but on Thursday, employees of the U.S. Park Service dismantled a slavery exhibition at 6th and Market Street in Philadelphia. That was one of the first and only sites on government property that acknowledged slavery, specifically memorializing the 9 African people of African ascent that George Washington housed in that mansion at the Robert Morris mansion that he used as his residence when he was the first president of the United States. And immediately that day, the city of Philadelphia filed suit against the Department of Interior and the U.S. Park Service and another organization that was called the Philadelphia, the President's House Slavery Memorial Alliance, which had been meeting ever since he wrote and signed that executive order. They went into action, so it remains to be seen what type of lawsuit they're going to file, but they are working to file a lawsuit and get that exhibit restored.
Mm. Yeah. And most of us didn't know about it or weren't concerned about it at all. Hopefully, after all of this battling is done, this will bring the consciousness of the validity of this particular exhibit. Will bring it to more of our consciousness. And so out of that assault, out of that attack, we will have the potential to be even stronger, even stronger. I do want to put in a story that a couple of stories that I did find it was on allafrica.com. Ethiopia, the commercial bank of Ethiopia, launches CBE Connect digital platform. It's a digital currency, but it's much, much more because we understand we have the first digital currency that existed in the world. It comes from Ethiopia. I can't think of the name, M-Pesa, and that is very important. But now they're saying the commercial bank is unveiling CBE Connect, a digital platform that bundles together over 7 financial services, eliminating barriers with direct transfers from global banks to Ethiopian fintech wallets. So now Ethiopia is moving very firmly into digital currencies, our ability to connect, the blockchain, all of these things can advance. Here is another opportunity, Africans across the diaspora. Bring your skills, bring your knowledge, bring your investments, move them into CBE Connect from Ethiopia. It is a brilliant opportunity. It does build upon the back of the African Continental Free Trade Area, and that is our ticket to move into a future where we become unrestricted. Unrestricted. We got to go forward with that. And I hope people heard me. I hope people understand what this means.
Well, we have to look at it within the prism of our own experiences and do our due diligence, because it could end up being a double-edged sword that brings on the new world order.
That's right. And everything must be looked at from that dualistic expression. Is this good for us or is this bad for us? I say let the African Continental Free Trade Area be the grounding that keeps all of this moving in one direction. If it leads to the continent being able to do a better job of using its own resources for its own benefit, then we can go forward with it. I do completely agree. We've got to be cautious because many of these systems ultimately are not being designed by us, for us, with us.
Well, it's funny too because it's literally hijacking space and time. I don't want to go too deep, but I was a couple of friends of mine are trying to convince me to get on anti-social social media, and I'm reluctant as hell. But with that being said, I was looking up, okay, so what are the basics with some of these platforms and stuff? Some of these young people are dedicating so much of their lives to trying to increase their algorithm and their rate of exposure on Instagram and TikTok that it's almost as if time is being sped up in such a way that is I'm having to really ask myself, is this what I want to dedicate the rest of my life to? Is to getting on this kind of this virtual platform and then spending the rest of my life trying to increase the exposure that I have in this alternate reality, so to speak. Now, I'm not knocking people that are in it. I think it can be a great tool, especially if you're entrepreneurial and you have a business. I think we need to also, in the spirit of Ma'at, we need to stay very, very connected to nature as well. But these things, I'm seeing these young people, the selfishness is increasing. And that is because when you are just watching those reels and those shorts, your attention span is getting nullified to the point where you can't tolerate even a conversation with somebody anymore.
unless it's about the short form video that they just watched on on TikTok or uh, Facebook, Instagram, whatever. Yeah, you're making an excellent point. You're really talking about a paradox of being.
Yes.
You don't exist if you're not found in these forums, but the more that you are found in these forums, the more we can eradicate who you essentially are, Brother Dwara.
And exactly. And I mean, I remember about 10 or 12 years ago, the FBI came out with a statement that said that those who are not on social media are deemed psychopathic or sociopathic.
Mm.
Now,
By
I don't
whom?
know. Yeah, exactly.
By the platform, by TikTok.
By the psychopaths. Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Can the deep blue be found in these virtual spaces? I think yes, to some degree, but I don't
we
think.
can we
Go ahead.
can put down little bread crumbs along a pathway and lead people to them, but I don't think Deep Blue can be compatible with them because of the short forms of them. They intended to shock you into responding, reacting, and that is the contradiction of the Deep Blue.
And also, the deep blue is it's part of our divinity we have access to all the time. It's just that this society manipulates us and tricks us into being outer directed.
Mm-hmm.
When the key to effective and efficient living is to engage in introspection, meditation, and deep, peaceful cogitation using what I call the whole mind, whole brain processing, using left and right brain.
Mm-hmm.
When you think of it,
That's
our inherent nature is peace and love. There's no such thing as an evil baby.
that's right.
Right.
And
So getting
unless
back
the
to that
evil
statement,
baby becomes a representative, an iconic representation of Urugu's ultimate personality, then
Or
Urugu will create that icon, but that's not a real baby.
yeah,
no.
that's a genetically modified one. It's a
Right.
designer baby.
Right. Or
Mm-hmm.
that there's certain rights that they can use to possess that infant.
Mm.
And you wouldn't put it past Urugu and some of these people who deal in white magic to do something like that.
MK
Mm-hmm.
Ultra. They were sexually abusing children in Canada through the MK Ultra program in order to see what kind of brain control. Man, you don't get any more sick and sinister than that.
That's right. That's right. We're going to have to wrap it up. We are in a deep conversation. And I think earlier someone said this is one of the favorite shows that they had heard in a long time. I thank you all for your attention today. You blessed us with your attention, and we are very grateful for that. And the questions you asked, we did our best to answer them as honestly as possible. And if we missed anything that we should have talked about, I apologize for not giving you what you needed because you did give us what we needed. You gave us your attention and you also gave us your feedback. And we are very grateful for that. Let's get final thoughts as we go to wrap it up for today. Brother Dwyer, would you like to lead?
Absolutely. I appreciate love it. Two things real quick. Isolation kills hope. That's something that I read this week. So my encouragement is to stay social, to remain active in your community, and at the very, very least, create your own local event. I mean, that's easy enough. And then number two, overdose on Maatian stimuli. Consume only that which elevates the soul, the mind, and the body to the best of one's ability, to feast upon the positive. And with that, I say Ashe, and I thank both of you, Babas, for giving me such giant shoes to fill. I stand upon very broad and mighty shoulders. So appreciate, love you both.
I say, yo, and
Likewise.
holding you up to the stars. is an obligation that Baba Juniors and I feel, no doubt, because if we do not elevate the next generation of brilliance that will lead our people, then we have derelicted our generation. And so we are proud to have you with us, Baba. You are confirmation that we are doing what we need to be doing right. Am I correct, Baba Juniors?
Ashe.
Ashe. Your final thoughts for today's program.
The storm and the weather is impacting a large swath of this continent, North America and the United States. So I'm encouraging people to stay warm, be safe, and check on your friends and relatives in other parts of the country. If you're in California, sunny California, check on your relatives who may be in Louisiana or Texas. Or if you're snowed in New York, check on your relatives who might be snowed in North Carolina or Atlanta, who are not used to this kind of weather. And that's my final input.
All right. Well, I want to thank everyone for tuning in today. I just put in the chat, my next book is the accumulation of the 60 books. It says 560. I meant to say 60 books, which came before it. Please support your brother at http://kitty.biz, and that's at the Conscious Rasta Press. I typed a couple of typos in there. I'm going to take that typo out, and http, where's the P? Go in right after the T, and do support the Conscious Rasta Press. I live off of these funds, and so I do highly love you for doing everything that you can do for all of us, and peace and prosperity for each and every one of us. And on that note, I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up for today. And you've been tuned in to your favorite. We aim to be your favorite. We are LIBRadio, LIBTV. We are livinginblack.com. And also, please, 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 you heard us say a lot of times a day, look for the cool blue to disconnect from the chaos, to disconnect from the madness. It is there for all of us. And I highly recommend that we all take advantage of it. And let's build up, grow up. Let's move toward our greatest destiny. So on that note, I want to thank you all for tuning in to your favorite. We aim to be your favorite. We are LIBRadio, LIBTV. We are livinginblack.com. Peace and prosperity to each and every one of you.